Hi, folks, and welcome to week two. This is going to be zines and social justice. So I'm very excited to continue our conversations. Okay, so my land acknowledgement again, because I can't occupy this space without acknowledging the original inhabitants and unceded traditional village sites of the land my home is occupying and built upon, which is the Namkeg tribe of the Massachusetts Pawtucket Nation. I take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land, past, present, and future. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of great conversations happening in the discussions, and then also just seeing the mini zines that you've all been creating, which I just think is amazing. And there's a couple of things that I want to address because it's kind of the same conversations that I have with students, and it's this. I wholeheartedly believe that creativity is an inherent birthright, that we are all born with the ability to create. There is a distinct difference between creativity and talent. And I think we often blur the lines between those two. Everybody has the capacity to be creative. You have the capacity to be creative. Not all of us are going to be Frida Kahlo, right? That's not how this works. So while I might not have quote unquote talent to be an artist, you creating anything and making lines on a paper, you are creative. When you write, you are a writer. When you create art, you are an artist. I think that there is a lot of gatekeeping that happens in the art world about who can be an artist and who can claim that they're an artist and who gets to be creative. And I think that that's all just a bunch of crap. So I think for those of you who are struggling right now to see yourself as creative, to see yourself as um, someone who can be artistic, let the next 5 weeks be your playground. And I'm hopeful that at the end of it, you will have rediscovered that piece of you that you may have walked away from as a small child. Most of us who struggle with who struggle with considering ourselves to be creative, typically have a moment in our lives where we chose to walk away from art. And that could be of any forms. That could be singing, that can be dancing, that can be drawing, painting, whatever. It's usually when we become cognizant of the fact that someone is over our shoulder judging us, right? And we get criticism. What we've created becomes now critiqued. Some people will say, that's great that you think this sucks, but I'm still going to dance. I'm still going to sing. I'm still going to do whatever. And then there are those of us, I was of this latter category, that is like, okay, well, I suck and I'm done. And then it's taken me the better part of my life to realize that that's all actually a myth, right? That we are all creative. We all have the right to create something. When I'm working with students, that's usually one of two things that come up. Actually, there's a third one. The first one is I'm not creative in that way, in whatever that way may be. In case of zines, it's the creation of zines, right? Like they're seeing themselves as like not an artist or a creative person. Um, cooking food, following a recipe, that's all of this is creativity. It's just the way we frame it. The second thing that I hear students say is that I don't have anything to say that I think anyone would want to hear. And that really hurts my heart because somewhere along the way, they have been they've been duped into believing that their stories don't matter, that their feelings and emotions don't matter. And then the third thing I hear is that folks feel guilty for spending time on artistic things as opposed to the more intellectual, sort of academic types of work, right? That we're in college or school or whatever to learn, and that taking time out to be creative is somehow less rigorous than other types of scholarship, which again, I think is total crap. I think oftentimes creating a zine that blends research or your personal narratives or whatever is far more rigorous than writing a paper. Mostly because nobody is going to compensate for the emotional labor that goes into creating a zine, especially when we are being vulnerable in that zine. So I just wanted to say this because I just believe we're all creative. And I'm hoping at the end of the 6 weeks that you have a different view about yourself and the realm of creativity. So, okay, thank you for attending my dawn talk. And now we'll move on. So zines are an accessible way to talk about topics that are frequently silenced or seen as taboo. And this is why they are often found in social justice movements, because folks are able to write about topics that they're not seeing represented or seen accurately represented in the media. It's also a way to combat misinformation about things and stigmas. Think about like the AIDS ACT UP coalition during the 1980s. I think about the young girls in the 1990s during the Riot Girl movement that were producing zines about topics such as like rape and incest, especially young people who oftentimes their stories get ignored, like tweens and teens. I don't know how many times as a young person, I was told by an adult, oh, what do you know about love? You're only, 13, you're only 15, you're only whatever. That those stories sort of get dismissed. And they are also kind of looked at in a patronizing way. So zines are a way to give power to folks that have been historically disempowered. And because zines are ephemeral by nature, zines elicit an urgency and a call to action now, right? That by the very way that zines are made, we're not sitting around waiting for things to happen. We're producing our zine because we want to get the information out there so that something can start happening now. Okay, so there is like a bazillion different frameworks that we all use in different sort of educational environments in which we frame information literacy, which is one of our big, right, jobs as librarians, is to help folks understand and make sense of the information that they are encountering. So this is the public librarian's strategic plan. And again, just like everything else, you can click on this to read more. But they are focusing now on a social justice aspect under this transformation frame, where they're inviting in ways to talk about information literacy and media literacy and health literacy and social justice is going to be weaved or woven in to those different areas. So this is one framework that if you find yourself working in a public library, that you may be referring back to when you are doing collection development or thinking about outreach and programming. For those of us that are going into the academic setting, this is the information literacy for higher education frameworks, this nice little petal, where we have information creation as a process, information as value, research as inquiry, scholarship is a conversation, searching is strategic, and authority is contextual. Zines fit in all of these petals, right? But the issue that a lot of folks have with the ACRL frameworks is this idea of social justice, that instead of it being sort of highlighted and really sort of parceled out um, to call attention to how important social justice is in information literacy. It's quote unquote kind of sprinkled within each of these different frameworks. So just putting that out there, that there is some there's like a push and pull, right, with this framework. Archives is no different. So American archives and archivists have come under renewed fire for the pervasive homogeny associated with archival amnesty, a homogeneity that privileges, preserves, and reproduces a history that is predominantly white and that silences the voices and histories of marginalized peoples and communities. So for those that are going into an archive track, again, with a framework around information literacy and the how do we use information ethically, how do we, in this case, preserve history, whose narratives get preserved, what type of resource is deemed worthy of being preserved, is something to think about when we are wanting to bring in more of a social justice focus into the work that we do. And of course, specifically for this class, we're talking about zines. So here are some different frameworks that I want to present you with, because I think this is getting more to this is more in alignment with what I would like to see happen. So this is a framework that was developed by activists and community organizers called the Research Data Center, which sadly is no longer actively working. However, the framework, as you'll see in the next slide, has been adopted and adapted. So I talked with students a lot with this image, where we have on the left the way information is sort of structured today. We have experiential, cultural, and spiritual knowledge at the bottom, which of course has less political power than the stuff at the top, which is mainstream knowledge. That's at mainstream media. You can throw in scholarly articles and books and all that jazz. But where zines sort of come into focus is that bottom half of the pyramid, right? That we are bringing in experiential knowledge, that we have the cultural knowledge, which can be from our own communities, it can be from our heritage, and spiritual knowledge in whatever sense that might be. It doesn't necessarily mean religious, but it can be about, you know, how we feel about the connections that we have amongst each other, but also into this like higher realm. So what the data center was advocating is more of an overlap of these things, right? So that when we are talking to people about information, about knowledge, that there is an opportunity for people to bring in all of these aspects, and that one isn't more important than the other. So that hierarchy is now flattened. So this is the coalition of communities of color, and they have sort of taken the Research Data Center's work and built upon it. So this is all about decolonizing data. And what I love about this framework is these different rights. So we all have the right to research. We have the right to the tools, right, that are going to enable us to be able to do the research and to survive. We all have a right to be heard, and to use tools in whatever way that might be, surveys and interviews, in order to gather information to bring back to our community, and to make informed decisions. We all have a right to be seen, and that's a right to be represented and treated fairly and accurately. And then we all have a right to know. We all have a right to access information, and we have the right to access information that does not have barriers, whether that barrier be cost or technical or language jargon. So I bring this framework, I present it to you as an alternative to thinking about the ACRL frameworks or the public library frameworks, whatever, around information literacy, that zines are one way in which we can talk about the frameworks and social justice, looking at this through a different lens. And here's the other one that I really love. So this is Adrienne Maree Brown, who I absolutely adore. This is Emergent Strategy. If you've not read that book, put it on your to read. But a lot of the things that we've sort of parceled out from that are the following: that small is good, small is all. So there's that idea again that what happens at the micro level can translate into the micro level. So we start with something small in the classroom, like zines. You start something small in your community, like zines, that plants the seed for social justice and activism, and then see how it grows. Change is constant. There is always enough time for the right work. There is a conversation in the room that only these people can have. So whether that be you're in a classroom, you're at a community meeting, you are meeting with your adult patrons in an outreach program that you are hosting, it's to find that conversation, and to see in this case where zines might fit and enable that conversation to move forward. Trust the people, move at the speed of trust, less prep, more presence. That is something that I have come to live by when I go in for one-off instruction sessions in my job. Is it's more important that I'm in the room and less about like whether or not I have everything I'm about to say memorized. And what you pay attention to grows. So focusing on social justice frameworks, focusing on building community, that has power, and you can make changes. So I think when I talk about zines, I think about the broader sort of this sort of idea around critical creativity. And critical creativity is the ability for someone to take an idea, to do a bunch of research on it, to take it apart, to see how they feel about it, see where they fit in, see what's missing, and then put it all back together, that creates something different. And zines are one activity that falls under this umbrella term of critical creativity, because they're created with the intent to share stories, explore and explain complex theories, and to present research to a broader audience. And by the time a person has looked at an idea and has researched a topic and has kind of taken it apart and looked for gaps and made sense and synthesized and all that stuff, right, that we think about when we talk about research, the person really knows that topic inside and out. They have become intimate with their topic, and more than likely, they have also humanized their topic. And we know from all the conversations that are happening in the social media spheres that one thing that we are sort of lacking, when we think about what's happening in the world, is this ability to humanize. And so being able to humanize the thing that you are interested in, whether that be a research paper that you're doing in college, or a paper that you've been assigned in high school, or whatever happens with the community that you're with, that ability to humanize leads to empathy. And then that empathy in turn helps us build connections, and it helps us become, I think, more of a community that is more socially justice-minded. So, what I am thinking about now in terms of research justice and the different ways in which folks have used zines in order to get their message out there, to talk about things that are happening in the world, telling true stories, combating misinformation, or propaganda, is to look at where are the gaps, right? whether this be in a collection that you have at your library, kind of looking at the different topics or subjects or whatever that you're currently collecting. Are there things missing? Are there voices missing? Are there subject areas missing? The thing about that, you kind of know this, but like the thing about books and academic articles is that it takes a hot minute for these things to get written, to get peer reviewed, to get pushed out into, the publication sphere. So topics that are happening right now aren't going to show up in a book, next week, because that's just not how fast things work in the publication world, but they can work that fast in the zine world. So this is where we're looking for gaps. We're feeling the pulse of our community. We are listening to what our patrons have to say, what's on their minds, what are they fired up about, what are they pissed off about, and then thinking about how we can fill that gap. And because we're talking about zines in this class, then we're going to think about how we can fill those gaps with zines. So I hope that you enjoy the readings this week, and the videos and the resources presented to you. I hope that you have enjoyed making your first mini zine and you're about to make another one. I hope that you're feeling inspired. I also want to say, like, whatever, I know, because I was in grad school. I'm in grad school right this now, doing my master's in writing, English, poetry, whatever. That there is this idea that coursework in a class should be like very rigorous, and we should be like freaking out over how much work we have to do. And while I think that there are some disciplines where that might be the case, like shout out to my nursing students, because there's like no way that I could take an anatomy class and pass it. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think that learning definitely is hard, but I also think learning can be fun, and that it can be creative, and that it can be something that we can come to that doesn't have to be wrapped up in a lot of layers of stress. So I hope that you're finding that while the readings may be like a lot, and the videos and whatever might be a lot, that you understand that you don't have to look and watch all the things, that you can save things for later. And I really don't want you to be stressed out taking this class, because I think stress is a barrier to our creativity. And I want us to be able to share this space together where we can think about how to show up in different ways for our patrons and provide a space for them to show up in different ways. So until next week, I hope you all are having, I don't know, you're just like having a time. And I look forward to having more conversations with you all and seeing you in the campus site.